All right. Hello, everyone who's joined so far. So great to see you once again. Or maybe you're joining me first time live for part two tonight. Thank you for that as well. I love that you're here and that you've carved out the time to join me live. I'm going to get started. We're working on the chat function as we speak. I practiced it the other night with my partner and it was working. So we're working on it, but I can see that the Q&A function is working. And I will certainly open it up and visit it at the end of the webinar when our Q&A starts, and we'll do our best with that. Just a few housekeeping things once again before I get started. First of all, welcome. I'm Jessica Ferguson. You'll see Jessica Pikash Nutrition on my slides. My business is in my maiden name. Ferguson is my married name. Same person, one and the same, just to clear up any potential confusion there. There will be a Q&A at the end, and we'll use the Q&A function for that if the chat doesn't happen to be working at that time. And you all did a wonderful job of reaching out through DM on Instagram to me, or Messenger through Facebook, or through my business email that I share at the end to ask any burning questions after last week's webinar, and that will always be an option for part two and part three next week as well. This session is already being recorded, and in terms of the resources from part one last week, if you simply head over to the Community Foods website, click on the events tab, click on this event, you will be directed to all of the hyperlinked resources, including last week's recording, last week's slide deck, and other resources that were up there pre-start of the webinar, but also added after webinar one last Thursday. And I will reiterate that at the end of the webinar because tomorrow you'll see all the part two resources uploaded, including the recording from tonight, the slide deck from tonight, and one other PDF guide that I will be speaking to at the end of this webinar. I encourage you to have a notebook or a piece of paper and a pen close to you for this webinar. I will be giving you some action steps and moments of self-reflection and mindfulness to comment on for yourself and write down on something as we go. So please grab one of those notebooks or a piece of paper and a pen right now if you can. And lastly, I encourage you to close all other tabs on your computer, set your phone to the side, and strictly focus on this. You've made the time and effort and commitment to be here, and you're going to reap the most out of it if you're completely focused on this and nothing else. So thank you again for being here. And as we dig in, thank you once again to the most wonderful local partners I could ask for, Community Natural Foods and Calgary Co-op, for having me as a guest presenter this winter with this three-part gut health series. I certainly love collaborating with them on a number of different projects through the year, and they have been a wonderful pair of local partners to me, and I couldn't be more excited to be here with you and sharing this webinar series with you. So let's dig in. There's no time to waste. If you were here for part one live or you watched the replay, you know it was a packed webinar with all kinds of fundamentals and giving you the big picture in terms of gut repair and healing foods and beverage from last week. This week, equally important, if not more important at times in our lives, calming and energizing lifestyle practices for gut repair and healing. I'm just going to double check my settings. All right, we're ready to dig in. Here we go. All right, the agenda for this evening. Again, some of these things are going to repeat from part one because now we're looking at these things through the lens of lifestyle practices as opposed to gut repairing, healing, and healing foods and beverage. So I'm trying to make the connection between each of these pillars over the three webinars, and that is why you will see some overlap, because things triggered or exacerbated by particular inflammatory foods and beverages can lend to similar symptoms that are triggered or exacerbated by lifestyle practices or a lack of therapeutic lifestyle practices. So we're going to look at why the gut is ground zero for thriving health as it relates to lifestyle practices. We're going to look at those specific lifestyle factors impacting gut health. A review from last week, but as it applies to lifestyle practices, how gut inflammation starts and progresses, and why I take the approach I do with my clients to gut repair and healing. We're going to dig into three different areas of our lifestyle that are crucial that we be dialed in and mindful towards and self-reflective about: stress management and nervous system regulation, functional movement, day-to-day movement that gets us through our day, and the activities we need and want to do, and therapeutic exercise, soothing sleep supports for effective recovery to tackle each new day in the ways that you most want to, and of course, establishing your next steps from here. I'm sure you can think of 1, 2, or 3 takeaways that are your next steps from last week's webinar, and we'll do the same this evening in each of those 3 areas. So I hope you're ready. I'm just going to pull open the Q&A one more time. Okay, I think we're ready to go. I'll come back to that Q&A at the end. So hold those thoughts or write them down so you can ask your questions at the end, and I'll get to as many as I possibly can in the time that we have together. A quick reminder as a disclaimer here, I'm not a medical professional. I'm a certified culinary nutrition expert and holistic nutrition professional. This information is wide-reaching to reach you, the general public, this evening. It's for informational, educational, and empowering purposes only. It is not personalized medical advice, nor should it be. Consulting with your primary care physician or other medical professional is crucial in learning whether particular habits, foods, beverages, strategies are suitable for your unique health and wellness and medical circumstances. So let's keep that in mind as we move forward here. For those joining me for the first time live tonight, I'll quickly take a few moments to reintroduce myself to those who are new this evening. As a culinary and holistic nutrition practitioner for the past 8.5 years, my niche has been gut repair and healing, more specifically helping high-performing adults that are experiencing autoimmune gut disorders like celiac, Crohn's, or colitis imbalances, or non-autoimmune gut disorders like some of the conditions I've listed here, to embark on that journey to really repair their gut, regain all the energy they have lost, and start to release and heal those life-hindering symptoms that can often really interrupt and curtail our lives. And, I want you to be flourishing in your personal and professional life. That's certainly the journey I've been on since being diagnosed with ulcerative colitis in 2024. And so it's an ever-evolving journey. And that is why the work I do, that is why I do the work I do in this niche. It very much stems from my personal journey with digestive autoimmunity since the early age of early 20s in wrapping up university at that time. What you're going to learn tonight, if you haven't already grasped that strongly from part 1, which I know you have, is that health starts in the gut. Your body is very capable of getting into a far better state over time when the opportunity with the right kinds of supports unique to you, your health and medical history, are in the picture. And we're making those repeated small actions with high consistency most of the time over time. Change really comes from consistency over time with repetition with the right kinds of actions and closing the gaps and melting away the disconnects that might be in the picture right now, because you deserve to feel your best as often as possible and not just once or twice a month for that matter. And so, as I've noted here at the bottom, the work I do with clients really involves a lot of mindset work because there are often a lot of limiting false beliefs in the picture. And often our mindset is what holds us back the most, more than anything else, from seeing changes, short and long-term changes with our health. We need to close knowledge and skill gaps because what I'm teaching you is not inherently known. It's not taught as we grow up in the school system. It really is knowledge and skills and empowerment that comes about by having the conversations that matter with practitioners who are qualified to support you and your unique needs. So it's really about getting into sustainable, suitable, supported action and dialing back that support as it's no longer needed in the same capacity. How I practice is largely through my 5-month online private coaching program, the Digestion Method. That is a deep dive with enough time to make a true difference in really establishing a solid nutrition and lifestyle foundation with someone. I also enjoy corporate wellness workshops and public workshops around the city, virtually in person, and grocery store and health food store tours with clients as well. And my background, once again, is a culinary and holistic nutrition practitioner. In working in this second career of mine, I spent many years in the public school system in an elementary classroom of my own. So, really saw, the kinds of things students needed to focus and perform and function every day. And alongside that, and my personal health journey has certainly led me to becoming a practitioner. And I also spend a good part of my week at the University of Calgary in the Cumming School of Medicine, supporting the health and wellness initiatives for the medical school students there. So a very interesting week to week, and a very full week at that. All right, let's dig in. You saw this last week if you were here. The gut is ground zero. It's that first point of contact for things coming into the body. Yes, with food and beverage, with these four main functions we went over last week: ingestion, digestion, absorption of nutrients, and elimination of waste. Now, how does this pertain to lifestyle practices? Well, as I've noted here at the bottom, your gut function, your digestive system is deeply connected with your thyroid function. So the thyroid gland at the base of your neck that regulates your metabolism, helps fire up your metabolism, and very closely works with your gut to regulate bowel movements, believe it or not. Your gut is very connected to the function of your adrenal health and blood sugar regulation. We'll really dig into that as part of your endocrine system. Liver filtration, and hormones and neurotransmitters, everything from sex or reproductive hormones to, being connected to insulin and adrenal hormones and neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine that are really involved in that gut-brain connection. So tonight we're taking this away from the food and beverage and towards how, stress imbalances, nervous system imbalances, blood sugar imbalances, a sedentary lifestyle or highly over-exercising or poor quality sleep and recovery really can be damaging to the gut over time with repeated exposures of that type. It's all connected. So here are the lifestyle factors, in a nutshell, that are impacting gut health that we're going to dive in tonight. Varied environmental exposures from our homes and being out in our environments locally, and if we enjoy travel outside of Calgary and Canada. We'll be digging into the environmental factors more next week in terms of part 3. So I didn't go into detail with them here tonight, but what we are going to dig into is chronic nervous system dysregulation, being in that chronic fight or flight mode with our nervous system that really is shuts down digestion. It really just shuts down gut function and makes it harder to have good, thriving digestion. We'll be digging into movement dysregulation. So looking at either from a sedentary lifestyle, under exercising, lack of movement really impacts the bowels and elimination and gut health, versus chronic high intensity exercise that our system and our nervous system can't handle. Over exercising and recognizing when it's perhaps time to flip the switch on the severity or the frequency, duration, and intensity of the exercise we're doing, and whether it's suitable for what the state that our body's in, perhaps the age we are in consideration of perimenopause and menopause, and so forth. And sleep dysregulation. This can be anything from a late bedtime chronically, a delay of falling asleep, staring at the ceiling for an hour or 2 or 3 before falling asleep, multiple wake-ups during the night, too little sleep overall, or even feeling unrefreshed upon waking. And I'm sure all of us, including myself, can relate to any number of these factors through our journey so far. So as you saw, for those who were here last week, you'll see the next few slides once again. It sticks even better the second time we hear it. And we're also looking at gut inflammation and how it starts and progresses here through a different lens with the lifestyle practices tonight. So, after quickly reviewing this with you, or if you're seeing it for the first time, we'll make the connections to gut damage, gut dysfunction, and lifestyle dysregulation. But as we spoke about last week, dysbiosis is that real imbalance or loss of equilibrium of your intestinal bacteria in your intestinal tract, trillions and trillions of bacteria of many, many different strains. We have more poor undesirable bacteria that are naturally found in our gut and should be there. We have beneficial probiotic bacteria that should be there in a greater quantity than the other. And dysbiosis really comes about when we have a really poor balance of the two from repeated exposures and insults to the gut and body over time. Overgrowth of poor bacteria, too little beneficial probiotic bacteria, or we could even have overgrowth of good bacteria too. And you'll see this illustrated in functional testing screenshots that I share with you during part 3 as past anonymous client examples of functional testing. This really sets the stage for symptoms to start to surface, symptoms that maybe weren't in the picture before that are now staying in the picture and don't show any sign of going anywhere soon. And, that poor intestinal balance really just allows the floodgates to open for symptoms to surface and for things to progress toward a leaky gut, if that becomes the case for someone, which is really a state of chronic systemic inflammation. As we saw last week, those classic chronic gut and bowel-based symptoms associated with dysbiosis are encompassed here for the most part. There are others, but this certainly gives us a good picture of what we might be experiencing on some level. And so while inflammatory gut triggers from food and beverage repeatedly over time can contribute to these symptoms, so can lifestyle dysregulation in terms of being triggers, those lifestyle practices or lack thereof being triggers or exacerbating these kinds of symptoms, whether it's contributing to the development of these systems or exacerbating these already existing symptoms in the body. So how does chronic gut inflammation progress from dysbiosis? Well, it gradually becomes a leaky gut if the circumstances and opportunities are in place. You'll see on an image coming forth here in the next few slides that a leaky gut really involves the one cell thick lining along your small intestinal wall, which is an important barrier. That's where your digestion finishes in your small intestine after it's been churned and brought down to a paste by your stomach acid. It's been moved through your small intestine and digested further with the help of your pancreatic enzymes. And then those nutrients your body needs are absorbed through your small intestinal wall. And what your body doesn't need becomes the roughage that bulks up your stools in order for you to poop it out. And so when this barrier becomes damaged from too little good bacteria, way too much poor bacteria, maybe candida yeast overgrowth or other pathogens or poor bacterial toxins, undigested food particles, that's one cell thick lining starts to become damaged, and the thick, healthy, nice mucus along that small intestinal cell wall can start to thin out and become non-existent too, because the good bacteria live in that mucus. They're starting to die off. The poor bacteria are starting to run the show, and we have a transformation of sorts along that small intestinal wall. Now, those tight cell junctions between the cells of your small intestinal wall on a microscopic level start to loosen and pull apart. So think of, a fine mesh sieve and its tightly woven fabric, or cheesecloth, for example, versus a wrought iron fence with much bigger spaces between the sections. Just to make a quick analogy here, this is really where things start to flood into the bloodstream, set off your immune response, and things that are leaking through, undigested proteins, toxins, poor bacteria, are starting to be carried systemically through the body, through your bloodstream, to your cells and tissues. And this is why any disorder or issue going on in the body from head to toe starts in the gut, because what's coming through that small intestinal wall is then able to reach the entire system through blood as the carrier. And so this is a state of chronic systemic inflammation. If you're navigating an autoimmune condition or more, or other chronic condition, like some that I've listed here at the bottom, dysbiosis and leaky gut are the precursors to those conditions. So this would also apply to food sensitivities and allergies, seasonal allergies, arthritis and chronic joint pain, depression, anxiety with that gut-brain connection, skin issues like eczema, psoriasis, acne, and otherwise, and so on and so forth. Here's an image that compares a healthy gut lining on the left to a leaky gut lining on the right. And I'll let you come back to this on your own time with the recording and the slide deck, but it's a really great visual for those cells starting to pull apart, the mucus layer on top of them thinning, and things allowing to leak through in ways that they ideally shouldn't be. As I summarized last week, before we dig into those different lifestyle categories, my approach to gut repair and healing has certainly deepened and evolved and become more and more refined over my last 8 years in practice with clients. And really, number one, like we talked about last week, assessing and removing gut health disruptors in the picture is crucial at the start. We'll be digging into underlying gut issues through screenshots of functional testing next week, which could include gut infection, overgrowth, H. pylori, parasites, and so forth. but really looking at gut health disrupting foods and beverages like we did last week, and lifestyle dysregulation like we're talking about tonight, are gut health disruptors at their finest. So we really, the client and I identify what those things are, which of those disruptors are most prevalent as part of their day-to-day lifestyle at the start. And that is where our plan of action starts, in looking at their whole state of health, zooming out and looking at the big picture and not just honing in on food, for example. Step 2, once that plan is rolling, we're starting to re-engineer gut function. I'm always bringing in some type of digestive support to support food breakdown and any identified nutrient deficiencies. So this is, like we spoke about last week, the nutritional, therapeutic, high quality produce, fiber, protein, fats, and oils from a food perspective, but always keeping those lifestyle practices in mind along the journey. As we regrow your good gut bacteria and help starve off the poor and repair that mucus lining along the small intestinal wall where a leaky gut happens. As you can see here at the bottom of the slide, the self-repair optimization, the things we're digging into tonight, starts at the beginning and it continues on an ongoing basis. And this is really chunked down. Those small efforts repeated over a long period of time are what really shift the body. And with our mindset, nervous system, movement, and sleep and recovery, the approach is no different. We chunk down the habits that need to come into the picture. We start small and we layer new things in as we gain momentum and consistency and see things start to shift. I'm just going to take a break for water before we dig into stress and the nervous system. I'm also just going to look at the Q&A really quick. Yes, this recording and slide deck will be posted on the Community Natural Foods event website for this event, likely tomorrow morning. I thought that H. pylori was caused by a virus or bacterium and is often seen in lower socioeconomic populations. Can you please explain whether or not this is true? Yeah, H. pylori can be sourced from different things. It's naturally occurring bacteria within the lining of your stomach. So it can be carried and exchanged through bodily fluids in order to be spread. But can certainly come about for different reasons. We're more vulnerable to things that start in the stomach or lower down in the gut. When we don't have enough stomach acid, which starts to decline as we age, because that helps to kill off pathogens and poor bacteria at the stomach level to keep them progressing lower into the intestinal tract. Certainly a bigger conversation than we have time for right now, but we can certainly be exposed to these things just through international travel or food poisoning or other things that don't necessarily apply only to lower socioeconomic situations. All right, I'm going to keep going, but I'll pop open that Q&A a little bit later as well. Let's dig into nervous system dysregulation and how we start to regulate it, the whole fight or flight versus rest and digest mode of the nervous system, and its connection to blood sugar dysregulation, believe it or not. I didn't take that sip of water. Let's do it now. Okay. Not going to dig into this too scientifically, but it's a great visual for those who are visual learners, including myself, to have an overview of what the nervous system branches and departments and divisions look like. On the left side, your central nervous system, your brain, and your spinal cord. We'll set that aside. Let's look at the other side, the peripheral nervous system. If you look down at the bottom right-hand corner, through your motor neurons, your motor nerve cells, we have an autonomic nervous system that's further branched out into the sympathetic division, fight or flight mode, which I'm sure you've heard of before. Or maybe you find yourself mostly living in it right now, or the parasympathetic division, which is rest or digest mode, which is the opposite end of the spectrum from fight or flight and where we want to be living in most of the time. Okay, let's get to the next slide here. So let's talk about the impact of chronic stress. And sometimes we don't realize we're under chronic stress until we're having conversations with others, and they help to make that more clear for us if we're just not tuned into the level of stress we're actually experiencing day to day, because we've been in autopilot mode for so long and it's all we know. Stress is, and these hyperlinked areas are linking to research studies. When you have the slide deck here, you can follow the hyperlinks if you wish. But stress, a huge driver of inflammation and disorder in the body. in many circumstances, even more than someone's diet. And the thing is, your nervous system and body can't detect the difference between different types of stressors. So whether you're watching a horror movie or you're hiking in the mountains and you come across a bear and life is threatened, your body can't tell what you're experiencing. It just knows it's under stress and puts you in fight or flight mode as a protective reaction. But that fight or flight mode is designed to be for short periods of time. It's pumping your body full of energy and the capacity to mobilize yourself to get out of the scary, life-threatening situation. And then you're designed to come out of that mode and back into rest and digest mode upon calming down. So we all know what fight or flight is like. Our eyes dilate, our heart starts to pound, our hands might become shaky or clammy, we're starting to sweat, whether it's nerves before something big happening in your life, or, a scary situation on the road when you're driving, or hiking in the mountains and coming across a scary wild animal that is threatening, your ability to finish your hike. It doesn't matter. All of those symptoms are going to come rushing to the forefront because your body's responding to yourself in that situation. So your nervous system, your endocrine system is pumping out the cortisol, your stress hormone, the adrenaline, the norepinephrine into your bloodstream. That's a source of energy for you, so that even if you're dead tired and fatigued in that moment, all of a sudden you have the capacity to act, miraculously, right? Your liver releases sugar or glucose into your bloodstream as a source of energy to complement that. So those levels should all rise. And then when that moment's over, we come back out of that and we gradually return to rest and digest mode. But if we're in a state of chronic stress through our day-to-day lives, we are literally go, 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 hurry, hurry, hurry all the time. I used to live this way through probably most of my childhood with school and extracurriculars, and all of my 20s into my early 30s for sure, with all that I had my hands in. You're literally going from the time you wake up after poor sleep to begin with to the time your head hits the pillow at night. And then you wonder why you can't fall asleep, or you're waking multiple times throughout the night. You literally have no moments of quiet or stillness or rest and digest, perhaps the entire day. And I know we can all relate to that on some level. Now, the problem with that chronic high stress and fight or flight mode is that hormonal imbalances, especially with cortisol, your stress hormone, and insulin, your blood sugar regulation hormone, are continuously elevated. And this is how someone could find themselves pre-diabetic or even diabetic, even if they're not struggling with weight management, or there's no genetic component in their family. They've just had such elevated cortisol and blood sugar imbalances for so long that it's brewing under the surface for so long. Because when cortisol is spiked, as you see here, the liver releases sugar into the bloodstream, so your blood sugar spikes. And so this can have nothing to do with food at all. It can have strictly everything to do with stress for the most part in some cases. So when cortisol is elevated, blood sugar is elevated, and your pancreas is pumping out insulin like crazy, trying to keep up and shuttle that blood sugar into your cells and tissues where it belongs, as opposed to keeping it in your bloodstream. Your body's basically in survival mode, and it shunts normal functioning, including gut function and good digestion. So I've listed here some ways in which that chronic fight or flight mode and chronic stress directly impacts your gut health and your digestion. I'm not going to go through each of them here. They're here for you, but we all know when we're stressed, or we're not sleeping well, or we're go, 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 we're probably not having great bowel movements. We're rushing through and wolfing down our food. We're certainly not chewing it down to a paste. Your gut's then working extra hard to chew poorly, to digest and break down poorly chewed food and large food particles that could have been chewed a whole lot better. And we never feel great after eating that way. And so it's a really tough dynamic for our body to be in. And so as a result, this creates inflammation. It creates the cortisol and insulin imbalances, adrenal imbalances. It contributes to sleep disturbances because we've been so dysregulated throughout the whole day that sleep can't be expected to happen quickly and naturally and comfortably without interruption. And, when we're not sleeping well and we're not digesting well or eliminating well, our immune system is so largely housed in our gut that we become vulnerable to becoming sick and worn down. And we all know the sequence of events that happened before we end up sick. We can kind of think back to earlier days of the week when this all started, and it just became a ripple effect leading up to the acute illness. So it just all contributes to damage on some level and inflammation. So let's take a moment here while I take a sip of water to pause and reflect. In order to start repairing and healing the body as the whole picture, starting with the gut and digestive function, your nervous system must feel safe and calm. And if the body feels threatened and in chronic fight or flight and the opposite of safe and calm, it's very hard to improve digestion. And this is why the lifestyle practices and self-reflection and mindfulness is a crucial part of the process. If we're eating extremely, extremely well, drinking lots of water, feeling like we're doing the right kinds of exercise, but we're holding on to inflammatory, toxin-based weight's not shifting, that's such a common complaint, right? It's because your nervous system is dysregulated and the body's holding on to weight, and body fat is a protective mechanism from the threats of the stress that are chronically in the picture. So, conversations I'd like to have with my clients, what are your main stressors in your life right now? We're often feeling overworked, overbooked, and overextended, and that really comes down to the boundaries we have or have not set in our lives. Maybe they're non-existent, maybe we feel they're existent, but they're being poorly reinforced. We're, not asking for help. We're trying to do it all. We're thinking no one can do things as good as we can. And we end up doing so much that we can't possibly find moments in our life during our day to stop, have stillness, have opportunities in that rest and digest mode. And until, this changes, repair and healing isn't going to be very successful, short-term or long-term. So on a piece of paper, I'd like you to rate your current stress level. 1, very minimal. Probably no one will report a 1, even myself. Or 10, complete overwhelm. Let's make it clear for yourself right now on your piece of paper what that is. And based on that number and how we feel looking at that number, it really could be time to start evaluating our days. And I like to use the phrase, what will stop, start, and continue from here. One way you can help define for yourself what will stop, start, and continue is by using a time blocking strategy. You can easily make this in Google Docs or Microsoft Word or hard copy for yourself. This one just goes from 6 a.m. to noon, but it could go all the way to your bedtime. Just didn't all fit on the slide. But basically in these spaces, you are noting down what you did during these hours of the day. And at the end of the day, at the end of the week, you can look at it and think, okay, what are my priorities day to day and week to week? And are they reflected in this calendar? Or is a moderate amount or a lot of time going to things that really aren't high priority in my life right now? This could be anything from too much TV or too much mindless scrolling on Instagram or social media channels. What might feel like wasted time in hindsight, or too much time spent on things that aren't high priority in your life. And this, like food journaling and tracking, is a really powerful way of seeing where your time is going. Because we all have the same basic needs. We all have to fit them in day to day and week to week. We're all working, or, your work schedule is going to differ from the next person. But if we're working a 40-hour week, we have the same number of hours to fit in whatever's priority for us. And it's like a bit of a jigsaw puzzle, carving out what goes where. But it can really help see whether what you're doing in your time matches with what you've identified as your life, personal life, career life priorities. So I hope you'd be willing to try this for at least a week at a time to give you a sense of where you do have time to carve out things for things that are higher priority in your life that may not be showing up too often right now. Some starting points with regulating your nervous system and getting you out of fight or flight mode almost instantaneously, which I love, is getting out into nature. Hopefully everyone's come out of their Calgary hibernation cave of the minus 20 to 30 degrees weather. And, the best way you can instantly shift from fight or flight to rest and digest is to get outdoors. Or just bundle up more if it's a little bit cooler outside. Get into nature, no technology with you, no phone with you, and just feel the sunlight on you. If it's out, feel the fresh air, do a light to moderate walk, or just sit outside. It's instantly calming, releases those feel-good endorphins into the brain, and just breaking up sedentary times or chunks of work time with some movement outdoors. I know I do that a few times during my work days right now. It just is an instant refresher, an instant brain clearer, and you just feel better. There's no denying that. Laughing, whether you're watching, listening to, or chatting with someone or something funny daily, whatever that is for you, laughing takes you instantaneously out of fight or flight into rest and digest mode. For me, maybe it's putting on an episode of the podcast Smartless on my commute to or from work. Maybe it's watching, for me, Jimmy Fallon's account on Instagram. He's always a riot. Or, a great dog account goes a long way, or connecting with a family or friend or a partner, anything that gets you laughing. And you know what that is for you. And just carving out, and these don't have to be big bits of time. They could literally be 5 minutes. Prioritizing moments of stillness when you most need them during the day, when you stop and realize that you are overextended in that fight or flight mode. We really need to break that up as many times during the day as we can, even if it's just a few minutes at a time. This could be deep breathing, box breathing, breathing in for 4, holding for 4, breathing out for 4, and repeating maybe 5 to 10 times. This is wonderful to do before you eat, because then you're starting your meal or snack in rest and digest mode, which means better digestion, better bowel movements. It could be a guided meditation, not necessarily to fall asleep, just to focus or clear your head. There's wonderful apps out there. Any of these strategies I've listed here are calming for the nervous system. You know what you love the most in terms of those simple pleasures. I just encourage you to find moments in your day that you commit to them. And personally, I book them into my calendar and write them down on my to-do list for the day as something that's part of my day, so that I see them as things that are non-negotiables, as opposed to things that I'll get to if I get to them. And that mindset means days could pass before doing any of these practices, and then we're really feeling it in our body. So let's take action one more time on that piece of paper you have next to you. I want you to write down your one next step with stress management and nervous system regulation now, based on some of the ideas I just gave you. I was going to have you post it in the chat, but that's okay. Write it down for yourself, articulate it to yourself as I take a sip of water. I'll just pop open that Q&A one more time. Okay, we'll get to bedtimes with the next few slides about sleep, definitely. Is there a test for leaky gut? I'll be digging into that next week. So absolutely, I hope that you'll join me live for that, and we'll dig into that, including actual markers on some functional tests that point towards a leaky gut. Could you please open the text box on the top of your screen that we can all see? I'm not sure which one you're referring to. I have my video on. What probiotic do you recommend for gut health? I have GERD. Yeah, probiotics I navigate very carefully, because different strains do different things. And depending on what someone's underlying gut conditions are, probiotics aren't necessarily a therapeutic supplement in the beginning. For many people, we need to kill off the overgrowth or gut infection in the picture first, because probiotics, in some cases, particular strains can actually worsen symptoms. So in terms of day-to-day maintenance, you're looking for anywhere from 10 to 15 strands for a multi-strain probiotic. A good daily maintenance probiotic could have anywhere from 15 to 50 billion bacteria, or CFUs, colony forming units per capsule. 15 would be at the low end, 50 billion would be at the better high end. But Community Natural Foods has wonderful shelf-stable and refrigerated probiotics there, and their employees, if you're walking through the store, are wonderful experts in that regard as well. But I approach that in a very custom way with clients, because it isn't necessarily a support that is in a lot of my clients' pictures in the beginning. Great question. All right, let's keep going. Functional movement and therapeutic exercise. When I say functional movement, I'm really referring to the movements you do with the activities you naturally execute during the day. Carrying groceries, climbing stairs, squatting down to pick something up, cleaning, all of those things that are movements you do in just executing your day. Therapeutic exercise, I'm referring to, more forms of exercise you purposely, intentionally seek out, whether it's Pilates or yin yoga, maybe it's spin, maybe it's hiking or biking or running or jogging or walking. And we're going to evaluate tonight whether the exercise you're doing is serving you or whether it's inflaming you. So we know exercise and movement supports our physical and mental health. So it's a double whammy there. Research shows that just 15 to 20 minutes of moderate intensity exercise stimulates your immune system with an anti-inflammatory cellular response. So gone are the days of having to go to a 60 or 90-minute class to feel like you've done beneficial movement and exercise. And so often our minds can say, oh, I can't make it there tonight. I guess I'm not moving or exercising tonight or on a weekend day. But we really have to dial in how beneficial spurts of short bouts or spurts of movement throughout the day at a moderate intensity, enough to get you sweating and your heart rate pumping a little bit faster, is incredibly beneficial. And the more of those we can do during the day, research shows that's even more effective than just a high intensity bout of 60 to 90 minutes once a day. It's quite interesting. When you're breaking a sweat, you're safely and gently detoxifying out toxins through your skin, your largest organ. Where I get concerned, and I've been here on my own exercise journey in my 20s and 30s while navigating active autoimmunity, before things really got into remission and settled way down, is that chronically intense activity that can really overextend your immune system, keeping it in a hyperactive state. I would caution against this if you're autoimmune. Like I've noted here at the bottom of the slides, if you're autoimmune, you have known hormonal imbalances, especially adrenal imbalances or blood sugar imbalances, active gut issues, you're already feeling tired and burnt out going into the high intensity exercise, you're tired instead of energized after the high intensity exercise, and or if recovery is slow. I remember in my late 20s, early to mid 30s doing barbell type workshop, like the bar classes, which were very high intensity for 60 minutes. And I loved them until they weren't working for me any longer. I was so tired during the class trying to get through it. I was tired afterwards, and the muscle soreness was next level. And it took me 3 or 4 days for that to disappear. Those were huge red flags that exercise was something my adrenals, and my gut and my nervous system could not handle, and I stopped it right then and there. It was just not enjoyable despite loving that kind of movement. That chapter was over. I needed to really look at other things that were equally enjoyable but left me in a very different state. Because chronic stress from over-exercising at a chronically high level when the body can't handle it, again, it keeps the cortisol levels high, which contributes to blood sugar imbalances in an ongoing way. And it really is just not therapeutic. The body's going to feel inflamed and puffy afterwards. It's going to hold on to body fat as a protective mechanism. And that's why, so many people can experience eating well and moving regularly and exercising like this, but seeing the weight pack on instead of dropping off and what you would expect to happen. There's gut inflammation, there's chronic inflammation, hormonal imbalances, and that doesn't allow to us to set the stage for repair and healing. So with movement strategies, I encourage you to mix it up. And if you're in perimenopause and you're feeling like you're in the thick of that time frame, or even menopause, your hormones are so drastically changing and fluctuating and plummeting in some ways that we do have to look at our exercise and how it's going to shift to evolve with the changes our body is going through. So I encourage you to mix it up. It needs to be something you enjoy and look forward to, not something you feel punished by. If that's how you feel, it's the wrong type of movement for you. Or maybe we're doing it too intensely for too long, and a fraction of that at a lower intensity would serve us very well. I encourage you to mix it up between lower intensity, like a light walk or warm yin or a Pilates mat class, with more moderate intensity, maybe like a swim or a light jog or a hike or a bike ride, something that gets you working a little bit harder, but it's not completely depleting you. If you're moving into the perimenopausal and menopausal years, the strength training is paramount in maintaining muscle mass, and supporting blood sugar regulation and hormonal imbalance through enough muscle mass and also stretching to avoid injuries. So I really encourage you to think about tonight what you enjoy right now, at what intensity, um, frequency and duration, and how you're feeling during the movement and after the movement, and how well you're recovering from it. Getting enough sleep both prior to the exercise and after, really important for recovery. And listening to your body. If your body says, I need to rest tonight and leave this exercise for a few more days, I would encourage you to do that rather than pushing through, because nothing good is coming about from just pushing through. So let's take action here. I'm going to take another sip of water. I want you to write down your one next step with functional movement and therapeutic exercise now. Is it increasing something you're already doing, reducing something you're already doing, swapping out an activity in favor of another? Some of our more restorative types of exercise for our nervous system and rest and digest mode are things like Pilates for strength at a lower intensity, or a warm yin for deep stretching into your connective tissue and deep breathing. The lower intensity biking versus high intensity spin for long periods of time. Being in control of your sets and reps with strength training versus finding yourself in a 60 to 90 minute training class like that, where you're following the progression of the instructor in the class when maybe you need to work at a different pace with less intensity, but still do the same kinds of exercises. So hopefully you can identify for yourself one next step here. Okay, and lastly, we're going to get into sleep. I'm just going to pop open the Q&A one more time. Is walking considered to be weight-bearing exercise? Absolutely. Absolutely love that. And it breaks up a good sweat. And it's not too high intensity. I like to walk some hills or stairs in my neighborhood too, just to have a bit of an incline with my outdoor walks. Yeah, good question. How do you detox when you don't sweat? Yeah, so it's really about digging into why the body is not sweating through the skin, which is some deeper digging to do. We also detox through our lungs through deep breathing when we exhale. We detox through our liver, through our kidneys with our urine, through our bowel movements with our poops. So we're definitely detoxing in other ways, if not sweating, but certainly something to dig into with your practitioner. In the summer and fall, I bike for 2 hours. In the winter and spring, I walk in the park. Love it. And I'm sure you feel incredible after those activities. All right, planning for quality sleep. Your circadian rhythm is your sleep and wake cycle. I'm sure you've heard this term before. Having a regulated circadian rhythm reduces stress on your body. And this is where I'm sure all of us, including myself in an ongoing way, I continually focus on this, can make some improvements with our circadian rhythm. And our sleep is regulated by melatonin, our sleep hormone. Cortisol is our stress hormone, pumped out by our adrenals, that is highest in the morning when we wake up, or should be, to tackle the day, and cortisol drops off through the evening so that we can become sleepy and tired when melatonin kicks in. So the thing is, with the bedtime question, the longer your body remains up at night beyond when you start to feel, especially tired, you're yawning frequently, maybe your body feels tired, your brain feels tired, and the yawning is showing the physical signs of that too. The longer we keep pushing through that instead of just going to bed, the more cortisol levels start to rise and remain elevated in the evening when they should be dropping off so that melatonin can take over. So, with cortisol remaining elevated like that, melatonin can't rise and start to take over. So it really starts to skew those hormones and our circadian rhythm right then and there. And from what you've learned so far, when we have increased cortisol levels that are, higher for a good part of the day than they should be, or from chronic stress and that fight or flight action, the dysregulated blood sugar levels continue. The stubborn weight gain stays on the body and just can't depart. And we start to see this dysregulated sleep and wake cycle and that fight or flight mode all day start to show up in our sleep. Difficulty falling asleep, difficulty staying asleep, feeling, this is a big one for people, and I've been there too, feeling unrefreshed upon waking, even if you've been sleeping for 8 to 10 hours. You might feel like you slept for 2 to 3 or pulled an all-nighter. And this is because those hormones are so dysregulated and the circadian rhythm needs to be repaired. And we know what happens. We've all been there. Sleep deprivation, a poor sleep multiple wake ups, too late to bed, too early to wake up with the sleep quality we had. It starts to skew our appetite. We're craving like crazy the refined and processed carbs and sugar, and that just spikes our blood sugar even more. And we're surviving on that in survival mode the following day just to play catch up all day, essentially. And so this is kind of that vicious cycle of hormonal imbalance coming about from a poor circadian rhythm. So a little bit about tech exposure and sleep. This is, more challenging to do during different parts of the year based on how much daylight we have and how early it can get dark. Luckily, we're on the upswing of this as we move towards spring, thank goodness. But starting to power down technology, the blue light exposure, once darkness falls is really important. And it does become harder when it's dark at 4:30 and you're getting home from work per se, and you have the rest of the day ahead of you and you have other things you want to do in your personal life. So it is challenging during that time of year, but we can protect our eyes, our blue light exposure, and that cortisol melatonin rhythm throughout the day that keeps us wired and tired at night and in fight or flight mode if we're just continuing to push through with the blue light exposure well into the later evening. I've linked to a few different brand examples of blue light blocking glasses that can completely or near completely block the blue light when you're on a device or watching TV and the sun has already gone down. They can be fashionable, they can be non-fashionable, unfashionable. You take your pick, but they are a life changer. I even have a blue light filter on my prescription eyeglasses. There are options. But the most important thing I've learned over the years, and my clients too, is listening to your body. When it's time to go to bed and you're tired, go to bed. Everything else can wait for tomorrow if it's not an emergency, because this is your prime opportunity to sleep, repair, restore for the next day ahead. And someone was asking about an ideal bedtime. Your ideal bedtime or your most ideal hours of deep REM sleep are 10 to 2, believe it or not. And a lot of people aren't in bed or asleep for a lot of those 4 hours, depending on their unique circumstances. But, the sooner you can get to bed by 10 or even earlier, some nights or most nights or all nights, the better off you're going to be. Because the later we stay up, the more tired we are to begin with, the harder it is to fall asleep in many cases. And we've lost that critical time frame when our liver is most active in helping to clean up and repair and restore our gut health, our digestion, and debris from our cells and tissues and bloodstream as well. So what I encourage you here, we're going to make an action step here, is that your evening routine be equally important as all the things you do in the morning to get yourself ready for the day as part of your morning routine. It's called sleep hygiene or a sleep routine. I want you to consider the 60 to 90 minutes before bed. Prepare what you can for the following day so that you can have less anxiety and panic the morning of, the morning of the next day when you're rushing out the day or working from home. Use this time to unwind as often as possible with non-stimulating, non-device activity where the blue light exposure is very minimal. I've listed some great ideas here. Perhaps you do some of these already, or perhaps there's room for improvement with doing more of them in that time frame before bed. But you're basically setting up your brain and your body to prepare for sleep in the same way you might take an hour or 90 minutes to prepare in the morning for your workday, getting the kids to school, whatever that looks like for you. We need to see this mirrored in the evening in the same way we set ourselves up for success at the start of the day. I've included in the slide deck here some evening herbal tea options that target each of these areas for some new ideas for you. What I love about Community and what was jaw-dropping the first time I walked in there back in 2015 when I moved to Calgary was that they have such an expansive teas that are boxed, loose leaf or bagged teas, but I love their bulk area. I was going through an herbal course at the time and I needed bulk options of loose leaf options of these different things, and they had every single one of them in some way, shape, or form. And I just couldn't believe the choice that you can't find anywhere else really, where you can even just dip your toes into trying a little bit of it without committing to a full package or whatever suits you best. But I love the accessibility of all these things and these more specialized items at Community every time I walk in there. Let's take action with sleep. I'd like you to write down on that piece of paper or notebook your one next step with sleep right now from the ideas I've just shared with you. Is it setting an alarm 60 to 90 minutes before bed on your phone? So that's your signal to start winding down. Is it less blue light time? Is it looking into blue light blocking glasses? Is it calming your system with an herbal tea in the evening? Not too soon to bed so that you're not getting up through the night, but what does that look like for you? By now, you've got a strategy for stress, movement, and now sleep. Those really can be your three takeaways for tonight in terms of your next three action steps that you build momentum and consistency with. All right, we're doing well for time. Thanks for sticking with me here. Let's open up that Q&A box one more time. We're not quite at the end yet, but I'm just looking at these as we go. Okay, nothing new there. Okay, takeaway resources for you. More goodies for everybody. Tomorrow morning or early into the day, Community Natural Foods, the wonderful team there will post the slide deck from tonight. Once again, the slide deck from last week is already on the event page on the Community Natural Foods event tab of their website. From last week, or even before last week, my product recommendations around community were posted. This is not an exhaustive list of everything for gut repair and healing, but they're some of my favorite products I rely on personally and in recommending to clients that are found around the store in a number of categories. And tomorrow, along with the slide deck and recording for tonight, you'll also have a 2-page PDF starting guide with nervous system supportive strategies and quality sleep supportive strategies, which very much overlap with what I've just shared with you here in the slide deck. So again, the items on the left and right will be posted tomorrow along with tonight's recording. The item in the middle is already up there from previous weeks. If you were here last week, you saw this awesome code where you can save with your online purchase at Community Natural Foods or Calgary Co-op, since they are, within the same larger company. You can use code GUTSAVE15 to enjoy $15 off when you spend $150 more on $150 or more on the nights of these webinars from 6 p.m. to midnight. Hopefully you're in bed before midnight. Last Thursday, this Thursday, and then again next Thursday for part 3 when we move into March already. So screenshot this right now or write it down. If you're looking to do some online shopping at either of these stores, enjoy the discount code while you can. And thank you to Co-op and Community Natural Foods for providing this to us. I look forward to using it as well. For those of us joining tonight for the first time, or to reiterate for those who joined us last week, in case you haven't been to the event page on the CNF website for this event, these are the resources that were shared with you last week, the slide deck and the recording from part 1, key gut health nutrients and foods that contain those nutrients as well, the product recommendations, of course, and the recipe bundle is a mini recipe bundle. It's a snapshot of the much more robust bundles my clients have access to as part of their therapeutic protocols that I devise for them in our partnership together when we're working together. As we wind down here, I want to take a moment to share with you an upcoming event in both Calgary and Toronto, depending on where you're tuning in from. You're probably largely local to Calgary, but you'd never know. And Community Natural Foods is actually very involved in this event. It's the Canadian School of Natural Nutrition Alumni Association's annual Holistic Nutrition Conference. The Canadian School of Natural Nutrition is where I did my holistic nutrition training. So while this conference is open to all sorts of health and wellness based practitioners, including medical practitioners, of course, it's open to the public. Anyone can attend through their ticket sales. Community Natural Foods is an insane sponsor of this event. There is a serious swag bag associated with everyone's ticket that you receive that day, and it really contains incredible products found within the store from a variety of natural health and wellness companies, some of them of which are exhibitors that day in the exhibitor hall as well. But it never ceases to amaze me what Community Natural Foods does for our conference every year and how generous they are. Early bird ticket sales for Calgary actually end on this Saturday, March 1st. You have a hyperlink here if you'd like to visit it through the slide deck tomorrow to access the early bird ticket price. If you love this kind of stuff, obviously you do on some level, you're here tonight and for this gut health series, but this is a full day of learning, 9 to 5 that Saturday. I believe 5 different expert presenters, including we've just secured a Calgary-based Olympian. I'm really excited as one of our keynotes. And if you'd like to do some new learning with a like-minded community that will leave you just fueled and empowered that day, I encourage you to attend. I enjoyed being a speaker last year. I'm going to enjoy being a volunteer there this year, but I always attend in some capacity. And I look forward to you introducing yourself if you arrive that day and getting to know you and see you in person if you are on this webinar and you end up at that event. Lastly, as I wind down here, here's where I hang out between my website, my Instagram handle, if you'd like to give me a follow and learn more about my content that I share there and how I practice and how I serve my clients. Through Facebook, my personal page is open to the public, my business page as well. And here is my business email. If you have a burning question from tonight that didn't get answered that would really help to have the answer to sooner than later, feel free to send me an email. And like you did last week, I was overjoyed with the emails and the DMs, sharing your feedback from webinar part 1, your takeaways, what you're going to do next, and that sort of thing. If you make one of those recipes, snap a picture of it, tag me on social media, or send it to me through DM. I love seeing the action people are taking in their own kitchens and homes and lives. And lastly, similar to last week, I shared this at the end of webinar part 1. If you've been looking to have a conversation with someone you believe you can help, who can help you with the gut and digestive issues or even autoimmune gut issues you're experiencing right now, by visiting my website, jessicapikash.com, or by clicking on this hyperlink in the slide deck when you have access to it on the CNF website tomorrow. It's really that green button on my homepage too. You can complete that Google form and it will reach my inbox of my business email, and it really just provides some context, a beginning context as to what you're experiencing right now in preparing to have a complimentary conversation together for about half an hour. I can learn more context about what you're experiencing, whether I'm the right fit to help you as your practitioner, and how I then also share how my services operate and what kind of service offerings I have, so you can gain a sense as to whether that would work in your life and whether it's what you're looking for. Nothing breaks my heart more than having conversations with those who are continually advocating for themselves but are hitting walls with those that they speak to and just not feeling like they're getting anywhere or getting further along like they should be. And that is probably the most favorite part of my job as a practitioner in my practice, is helping to close those gaps and create those aha moments so that we know what you actually need moving forward that you've never encountered before, that actually moves the needle for you. So at that, I'm going to say one more thank you for being here. I'm going to open up the Q&A one last time, knowing that you have my contact information. And I'm also going to say a huge thank you to Calgary Co-op and Community Natural Foods again for having me. I can't wait for part 3 next week. Let me just look at these Q&A one more time. Yeah, thank you for sharing the code. GutSafe15, yes, for Co-op or Community Natural Foods online from 6 p.m. to midnight tonight. Okay, just reading through some of these. I heard from a doctor once that when we take vitamins that already exist in food, our body gets used to the supplements and it stops or slows down our extraction from food. What is the truth to this? Yeah, in terms of how I navigate this with clients, I always take a food first approach. If digestion is poor, if food breakdown is poor, bowel movements are poor, nutrient absorption is poor due to a leaky gut and the dysbiosis, then that's why I bring in the digestive support and targeted nutrients that are noticeably deficient through symptoms or testing, because we need to bring those up from a deficit in order to have better digestion and food breakdown to then absorb what's coming in from food. But yes, certainly a food first approach before looking at supplements. But I certainly use the supplements specifically with nutrient deficiencies in the beginning, so your body's better equipped to reap the benefits from food. as opposed to the supplements? That is I'd love to dig further into that question. That's a longer conversation and a bigger conversation, but that is how I approach things in the beginning, so that there's a minimal supplement investment and we're learning how to rely on food first, nutrients first. Yeah, so the slide deck and recording won't be sent to you. You just need to visit the Community Natural Foods website. Please go to the events tab, find this event in the listing, click on that event page, and there will be directions or hyperlinks as to where the resources are. Once you're on the actual event page, you'll find them, and they're all housed in one place for your convenience. You're very welcome. Do you have recommendations for those who struggle with motility, so movement of matter through the gut, and probably issues with constipation or diarrhea as well? Yeah, in that case, it's really a bigger, deeper question. It's why are there issues with motility in the first place? Is there poor bacterial overgrowth, yeast overgrowth, SIBO, H. pylori or parasites that are slowing that down? Do we have low stomach acid, low digestive enzymes, poor chewing? Too much fight or flight mode going on? It's a bigger, deeper question. And that's why when I do my comprehensive onboarding process through the screening tools I use, it really highlights where the deficiencies exist, so we know actually what needs to be supported. All right, you're very, very welcome. Thank you for sticking with me to the end. I'm proud of you for committing to this time, and I look forward to hearing from you through email or DM as to the action steps you've taken. And I look forward to same time, same place next week, everybody. All right, good night. Bye for now.